and get it.
This is Jazz for Jazz Reviews, and so this is it. I hope you've all had a good Christmas and all that shit, right? But I'm here to deliver everything that I thought as a reviewer really did it for me. The #1 spot will be Game of the Year for Jazz Reviews. It's been extremely hard to competitively place all these games in order. What I have not done is shower you with a group of nominees and just the one winner. No, what I've done is given you the tried and tested and popular top 10 system, with all the controversy and public criticism intact, and the views. There's a lot of views. So just before 2013 unfolds with Dead Space 3, Womb Raider, Metal Gear, GTA 5, let's see exactly what the hell I think 2012 did for us, the gamers, and the industry itself. Alrighty then, the fabled and heavily desired #10 spot, Sleeping Dogs. As developed by United Front Games, it was an open-world game originally intended as a part of the True Crime series. There was a lot of enthusiasm about this one. A lot of comparison was drawn with Grand Theft Auto and how Rockstar of all developers could learn a thing or two from these developers. The comparisons I thought were completely misplaced, and its development leagues away from a GTA. That said, it was a game in its own right. The inspiration you can clearly see came from kung fu flicks, and as an undercover cop, the main character Wei Sheng was actually responsible for infiltrating the Hong Kong triads, and as the storyline progressed, there was a clear moral dilemma, even if it wasn't played out to its full potential. The fighting mechanics I actually loved, and I think the result was quick, satisfying, and really exactly what I had hoped for. It was really important this title didn't turn into the typical shooter, but on the other hand, the firearms that you did get, the driving, and even mission structure felt very shallow. I praised the game for its variety in my review, but in the end, side missions really did feel pointless. The girlfriend missions were a complete one-off, which is fine by me in terms of gameplay. You know, I really don't want this.
Homie, it's Denise. Hey, it's Denise. What's happening?
You want to go out on a date with me?
We shouldn't see one another again so soon.
Sure.
But you would think writers would at least link your interactions with these characters to the plot, or at least a bedroom, anything. In the end, Sleeping Dogs became one of the many sleeper hits of 2012. It was still original and should ultimately be praised for its efforts and the fact that it was an enjoyable game grabbing some great scores. At number 9. Transformers, Fall of Cybertron.
Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
Look, I don't know how many managed to play the previous War for Cybertron, but this game also just plain out f***ing rocks. That is my review. Okay, now listen. After being bogged down with the same gimmicky and typical experience and rehashed designs every year, sometimes it's just great to sit back and play a game without too many frills, without going over the top. With no cover mechanics, a licensed sequel such as this, which actually grabs a half-decent reception, is rare. The pacing to the game was perfect, and whilst there's plenty of crazy moments to be had, it never went completely overboard. The narrative was true to Transformers, with superb voice acting throughout. Level design was catered to whatever bot you were playing, and really the amount of graphical variety rendered a result that was above all refreshing. And at number 8, The Walking Dead episodes. This was a surprise for me, for everyone involved. But more so for me, because I'm just not that big a zombie fan. I know, right? It's Shaun of the Dead and it ends there for me. Or the more alternative I'm a Legend. I didn't mind that. But as a point-and-click adventure game based on the Walking Dead comics, this was more for the experience than anything. It's great to see low-budget projects such as these killing the multi-million blockbuster hits for the Game of the Year awards. Telltale's point-and-click movie adaptations such as the recent Back to the Future were enjoyable, but all the 5 chapters of Walking Dead are obviously a lot more mature. It's above all a story-driven experience with a level of player-controlled decisions, which in most cases create a number of meaningful outcomes and a fair amount of replayability.
You need to be quiet.
Who is this?
I'm Clementine. This is my house.
You've been all by yourself through this?
Each of the 5 chapters have a lot of substance holding the plot together. A lot more than most of the bigger and more mainstream titles. It's about your reaction to the story rather than gameplay. The reasoning behind this spot is clear. It's great for the industry, the art form, and above all, worth the complete price tag. Number 7. Borderlands 2. Once again, not the biggest Borderlands fan, I could just never get into it. But with such an elaborate system of loot whoring and side missions, even I cannot ignore how big and authentic this title is, or fail to recognise the critical success of the first Borderlands. Not to mention all those guns. Big guns, small guns, guns with bits coming out of them, rainbow guns, ugly guns, and corrosive guns. With colourful characters and NPCs, which are all done so well. Claptrap is becoming quite the celebrity.
I am an auteur, which is French for awesome. Here, let me show you some of my work. I call this one Bandits at Play. I was inspired by 2 bandits I saw playing with each other.
Not to mention, easily one of the best villains of 2012. Drop-in co-op is implemented brilliantly, with a much more open world, bigger boss battles, improved skill trees, and so many perks adding real depth to the gameplay. Criticisms of course have been made that Borderlands 1.5 doesn't innovate or change enough from the core game, but I'm not complaining. You can't put a game down too much for being this dynamic. And I'm not even a fan. Number 6. Dishonored. Simplicity in this instance can complicate certain aspects of the game. The stealth genre is something that is often tackled completely the wrong way, whilst Dishonored, partly due to the small size of the game, can really focus on what matters. Stealth. Through superb level design and for, let's say, most of the time great enemy AI, the complexity really shows when gamers are organically allowed to combine abilities to creatively kill their enemies. Even when such methods may or may not have been originally intended by the developers. Players create the complexity through their own paths, but this is not an RPG, and being stuck between genres from how I see it can impact upon the storytelling. The level of backstory and atmosphere was sufficient from random NPC conversations and books, but overall it was the setting itself and its art style that delivered any kind of emotion, not the story. Despite its advances and originality, what about the bottom line? A $60 price tag. Well, you get what you put in. Dishonored is a game you first explore before playing to warrant the 6 to 8 hours of gameplay worthwhile. At number 5. Halo 4. What with the swap of hands, people were very anxious to see what 343 were going to deliver. It came off as a massive success, with a much more personal story, with all 8 missions sucking all that the Xbox has left to offer. Motion capture and facial expressions were spot on, with a great soundtrack throughout. Gunplay to the core is still Halo, but much more brutal and satisfying, with certain tweaks such as permanent sprint and multiplayer balancing, which in my view maintains the same Halo franchise but improves the game overall with that much more consistency. 343 have added and will be adding even more free Spartan Ops missions extending the story, and alongside the overhauled Halo Forge you're really getting value for money. Fundamentally, Halo is still Halo, with a number of features removed, adding more consistency to multiplayer for one, offering a real challenge. People will have their own preferences, but I fully support the changes that have been made, and look forward to how the franchise grows through the next generation of consoles. At number 4. The flagship of all that is Ubisoft. Rayman! And the second title, Assassin's Creed 3. Set during the Revolutionary War, the new setting is more than welcome with such a vibrant open world. The frontier actually feels worthwhile to explore. I always felt the open space of past games was just there to claim the open world status, but in this case, the amount of huntable wildlife, side missions and random encounters are for the most part well implemented. The naval battles, perhaps one of the best additions to liven up the series. As an Assassin's game, I think the turn doesn't mean all that much, with no difficulty options and an endless stream of but that's me, alright? The combat is more fluid, and executions seem to fit a little bit better this time around. The story itself is well presented, minus the Desmond Miles side narrative. Connor may be a little bland compared to the Italian Batman.
I was told you could train me.
No.
But he's still a great character to watch grow through the game. And of course the legendary free-running mechanics that are much more dynamic this time around, and you get the drill. The Creed formula's reached its potential in my eyes, but this is definitely the most ambitious Creed yet. What with a unique multiplayer and very expansive single player, the 20 plus hours of gameplay here make it a must buy if you're not seriously considering place 1, 2 and 3. At number 3, Journey. From that game company that made Flowers in 2009, the goal to this game is simple: reach the shiny mountaintop. As a nameless cloaked traveller, there will be no objectives as such, just some light platforming and puzzles to overcome in what has got to be one of the most charming games in recent gaming. From barren desert lands to incredible vistas, caves and mountains, Journey is visually stunning, its physics and animation something to be marvelled at. Journey on a technical level is incredible. A shame then that Sony's contract eliminates the chance of this game ever making it to PC. The soundtrack is perfectly timed, and like the game's effects, subtle. Even with no voice acting or plot, the impact it'll have on you as a player is massive. The themes to this title will be open to interpretation, and you're just gonna have to play it for yourself, netting your own unique personal experience. The game will, however, seamlessly link the player with other nameless travellers, and the only way communication can be achieved is through musical chimes, or simply through your own initiative. Above all, Journey defeats the consensus that games cannot be considered an art form. It's a game with no killing or any of the typical themes that dominate the mainstream. The 2 or 3 hours experience for $15 is completely worthwhile, and you're only really gonna believe me when you pick the controller up for yourself. At number 2, Far Cry 3. As covered in my review, the game is downright weird, in a good way. Alongside a range of characters, the pirate chief Vass will go down as one of the most memorable gaming villains of all time.
Did you want me to slice you open like I did your friend?
The game's emphasis is on freedom. Freedom to explore, hunt, and complete side missions, which are not just thrown in for the sake of it. Everything does tie together really well. Hunting, for example, is not just a superficial feature, but almost essential to carry more weapons and to hold more cash. The main storyline missions were all unique, and I can honestly say I never got bored in Far Cry 3. Thanks to the vast amount of vehicles spread throughout the huge map, the player will not be subject to endless hiking trips as in Far Cry 2. Within regards to the multiplayer, it's as you would expect, but the experience is still addicting. The game functions pretty well on the consoles, but PC support for one is terrible. The amount of lag and shoddy hit detection is astounding. But the map editor is back for the single player, along with 5 co-op missions, adding to a total of 20 hours of gameplay. And finally, at number 1, Max Payne 3. I don't think there's many that would agree with my choice here, but so be it. Max Payne is the most interesting alcoholic to have graced the world of gaming. The storytelling to this title is executed flawlessly. Some would say cinematics are too excessive, along with all that classic Max Payne narration. I say, I friggin' love it.
And with that, I guess I was ready for bed.
The visual feedback effects especially just convey how disconnected Max is to the world, and who can blame him? The more colourful Brazil is a great location. The environments are beautiful, with all so much attention to detail, with a very large-scale feel to the game. As a third-person shooter, Rockstar have broken barriers to deliver astounding realism in gunfights. The way Max holds a gun, for one, is perfect. There's so many of those jaw-dropping moments in this game, with crazy physical effects to the environment. Slow motion bullet time was implemented brilliantly not only in the single player, but the multiplayer. Rockstar are known for innovation. The multiplayer is not just some tacked on feature. Nope, it's a hugely progressive experience with all kinds of unlocks, character customization, a very cool interface, with information within regards to shots on a player's chest, legs and arms. Not only that, but with Rockstar Crews, fans will be able to import their unique crews and logos from Max Payne into GTA 5 this year. As a narrow linear game, you may be surprised to hear this game is a full 12 hours long, not including time spent with multiplayer, finding collectibles and mission scoreboard challenges. Max Payne 3 was a sequel that managed to stay true to the old games and still deliver emotion. From start to finish, the action was intense, and its mechanics more dynamic in movement and gunplay than I've seen in any other third-person shooter.